Good morning, and welcome to Listen In, Community, Conversations, Connection. I'm your host, Pam Holland, and you're listening to WOWD-LP Tacoma Park at 94.3 FM and streaming at tacomaradio.org. Today, I'm speaking with Julia Jarvis, and Julia wears many hats, so I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, Pam. It's great to be here. And I am the spiritual director for the Interfaith Families Project of the Greater D.C. area. And I also do wellness counseling for different people. And I'm a wedding officiant.
Great, great. And Julia, I know that you and I were both raised in the South, in North Carolina. So one of the questions that I often ask my guests is, were you taught to listen in to your own inner guidance as a child? So share with our listeners what that was like for you.
I was never taught to listen to my inner body wisdom. In fact, my mother didn't do it, and she died of colon cancer because she couldn't sense into something that was really wrong with her body. Mm-hmm. And she died at 69 of metastasized colon cancer. I was just never taught by being raised in the South that emotions were good, except the ones that were maybe more playful or joyful or happy. And even then, those emotions were monitored and couldn't be expressed fully. The harder emotions like sadness, jealousy, anger, definitely were not encouraged to be shared. My mother didn't know how to deal with her hard feelings. My father was all about hard feelings. So I myself grew up just not knowing how to be with all those feelings, especially the ones that were hard to hold. And they actually would create pain in my body, whether it was real tightness or nauseousness or... And as I got older, and especially in my early 20s, it got worse.
The pain,
your
body telling you that something was wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And having no clue as to how to be with it.
Uh-huh. And so how did you find your path to understanding how to be with it?
Well, it took a lot of suffering to get to a place and a space where I could get some help with it. When I was in grad school and seminary, I became extremely bulimic. I actually had an ulcer, and I knew I needed help. And my parents tried to get me a counselor, and she ended up being this Christian counselor who told me I just needed to get things right with God. If only I would do that, then things would be okay. And that was not successful. So I found a secular counselor while I was in seminary. And in the 80s, they didn't know much about eating disorders, so they put me on an antidepressant and tried to help me as best as they could to give me some tools. One of the tools was adult children of alcoholics, just to go and help me be with my emotions, how to be with my emotions. So that was very helpful.
Julia, you shared with me that there was a mentor who helped you a great deal to learn how to find your way to listening in. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the first therapist that I had on a regular basis in Louisville, Kentucky, she was the one that helped me to actually, she introduced to me the notion of taking care of myself and actually beginning to listen to my emotions and what they might have to say to me or give to me. So she was definitely a great help. My feminist theologian teacher, Molly Marshall Green, definitely helped me to find the power of my feminine energy, and that, lo and behold, there were actually women in the scriptures who had power and who made a difference in the life of Jesus and in the life of the Abrahamic fathers. So I got this taste of the power of the feminine, and at some point the only thing I could hang on to was the kind of golden thread of justice that runs through the scriptures, which a Catholic feminist taught me, Rosemary Radford Ruther, to hang on to this golden thread. And that thread swung me to where I'm living right now, Washington, D.C., where I worked on justice issues for many years.
Great. So who were some of the feminine characters in the scripture that you were interested in? And
well, I think Mary of Magdalene.
That had power.
And there's there's a gospel that they have uncovered called the Gospel of Mary. And ends up, she actually was much closer to Jesus than the disciples, which did not make the disciples happy.
Mm-hmm.
And she had this very special relationship and special kind of a listening place that she and Jesus created together that that we weren't reading in the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Gentile women in the book of Acts who come to the disciples and want to know more about Jesus, they were very powerful, very wealthy, and they really grew that movement. It was called originally in the first century the Way,
mm-hmm.
of trying to follow this historical Jesus person who had died. So I think there was this woman named Thecla that actually traveled with St. Paul, and she was his cohort in mission work. So,
great.
Yeah.
Great.
And I do want to say here that I think both you and I can resonate with the fact that we weren't taught to listen in because the body was bad.
Right.
We listened outward to these voices, to what the scripture was saying to us and how people interpreted those scriptures, literally, more often than not.
Right.
And to the ministers, all male. They were our authority figures, mm-hmm. and our parents. And there was hardly any kind of notion that there was any kind of experiential wisdom within us. Mm-hmm. So that took me and is still taking me some time to get mm-hmm. and behold and trust.
And you mentioned that you have a tool that mm-hmm. you could share with our listeners mm-hmm. That involves 5 steps. Mm-hmm. So can you take us through that?
Yes. First, I'll introduce it.
Yeah.
I have, I guess the last 20 years, have searched long and hard and wide for modalities to help me find my own wisdom. I don't think I was initially looking for my own wisdom. I was looking to feel better, mm-hmm. to feel less anxious, mm-hmm. to feel more whole. And I didn't realize that what that was to be found inside of me, and that my body's wisdom could bring all of that to me. And so I looked at many modalities, including nonviolent communication, mindfulness, which is still a big part of my practice, And then through mindfulness and nonviolent communication, I stumbled upon a process called inner relationship focusing. And so it was created by a philosopher in the 60s by the name of Dr. Gene Ginlin. And one of his students, Ann Weiser Cornell, took his work, moved out from Chicago where he was and went to Berkeley, California, where everybody goes that's looking for healing, and developed out of his work something called interrelationship focusing, using language to help oneself be with oneself and to listen to oneself. And the language is called presence. And I think being a mindfulness practitioner, mindfulness and presence are essentially the same thing. It's consciousness, it's awareness. It's how to be with whatever arises with compassion, with openness, with spaciousness, with non-judgmentalness, with warmth and caring. It's imagine yourself being with the most non-judgmental, most present person that you know of. And it's knowing that you can be that way with yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's practicing that. And that's what this work is about. So maybe we'll practice a little bit with the 5 steps of what Ann Weiser Cornell calls getting bigger than what bugs you.
Oh, what a great phrase.
Yeah.
And I love that word presence. Mm-hmm. Great word.
So this is a little bit of how you can practice it. So wherever you're at, if you're driving in the car, don't close your eyes. If you're at home listening to the radio, and you just want to pause for a minute, because pausing is a really big beginning part of this practice is to stop. And it's to check in. What's going on with me right now? And take a deep breath. And then how am I being with this something in me? So that's kind of part of the pause, is to say those 2 things. What's going on with me right now? And how am I being with myself? So that's the entry into the doorway of our inner body wisdom. And the first thing that you want to do, and you might think of a situation that you're going through right now with a relationship, something at work, something political going on. So just take that situation into your body right now and just invite it to come, what you're struggling with or what you're anxious about. And what you want to say is, I am sensing something in me right now that feels blank. Something in me right now is feeling whatever. Fill in the blank for yourself. So notice a little difference in language here. Instead of saying, I am so angry about what's going on, you're learning how to kind of separate from that feeling. So you're beginning to develop presence language. Something in me feels angry, or something in me feels stressed. So notice the difference between I am angry and something in me feels angry. Gene Ginlin says we cannot smell the soup if our whole face is in it. So it's the beginning of coming up out of the soup pot so that you can really smell all the ingredients of what your life is made up of. So that first step, something in me feels whatever. And the second step is, and I'm letting it know that I am here with it. Sometimes we can say, and I'm saying hello to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're turning intentionally towards it.
Even if it's painful or uncomfortable.
Even if it's painful. I think we especially have been raised or taught not to be with those things that are painful. And this is the beginning, a new beginning of actually turning towards the pain and being with it. It's like if a child came to us in pain, what would it be like for that child if we turned away from him or her?
Mm-hmm.
That would be even more, that would cause more pain.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to sort of pick the child up in our lap and check out what's going on. What is this child feeling and why? So the first step, something in me feels whatever it feels. The second step, and I'm saying hello to it, or I'm letting it know I am here with it. The third step is to lay a gentle hand where you feel it. Often our torso is where the field of energy, where the nerves are, the vagal nerve is, and we feel a lot of emotions here. So just putting a hand where you feel that scare, where you feel that sense of anger, that sense of sadness, and just letting it know through the warmth of your hand, through the pressure of your hand. We're mammals, we love affection. So it's giving ourselves permission to be affectionate with that part of ourselves that hurts, that's in pain. And then the fourth step is to expand our sense of being with this part. To say, I am sensing something in me that feels this pain. So it's broadening. It's the being, I am with this part. So I am sensing something in me that feels afraid. And it helps you be even a little bit more separate from it versus being merged from it. You are with it. Mm-hmm. You have now developed a relationship with it, right? So just check in to see how that feels to say that. I am sensing something in me that feels sad or stressed or anxious. And just be with that for a moment, sensing into how it feels. Your larger space, the space that can hold everything, can be with this place of pain. And the last step is to say, no wonder. No wonder this place is in pain. You know, and to do a little investigation, like I wonder why this part of me feels angry or sad. And maybe it's because of things happening at work or things happening at home that you're frustrated about or feel anxious about what's going to happen next. And it's just giving that part of you empathy. Mm-hmm. Like, no wonder you feel this way. Like you would a child. Mm-hmm. It's to give the child the empathy they so long for, the validation. Mm-hmm. It's validating the emotions. We get dysregulated because we don't validate our emotions. And emotions just really need to be felt physiologically. Emotions last anywhere from 30 seconds to 90 seconds. And so if we can just be with the primary emotion that's coming up and give it the empathy that it needs and the understanding, it often just will disappear, dissipate, move back into the flow of life.
Just from being heard.
Yeah.
And held.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's great. Well, we can definitely put those steps and perhaps some links to the work at listenin.org. And once again, this is Tacoma Radio, WOWD-LP, Tacoma Park. And you're listening to Listen In Show. Thank you so much for that, Julia. I love that. I can't wait to do it at home. I even had my eyes closed while we were here in the studio because it's very, very powerful. And the other thing that Julia had mentioned prior to the interview that I was fascinated with was the idea of the sacred pause. And she did mention as a part of this 5-step process that the first step was to stop. But I'd love to hear more about the sacred pause and its role in helping us to listen in.
Yeah. We can't even begin to listen in unless we stop. So we live in such a world that's so rushed. It's not valued to slow down, to pause. And if we begin a practice of even taking 3 deep breaths, and again, going back to those 2 questions of, okay, so what's happening to me right now, and how am I being with myself? Am I being compassionate, or am I just rushing by and ignoring this place in me that's in pain? So the pausing, we also call it the revolutionary pause, because that moment in which we stop and we check in to say, how do I want to live right now? What is it that I really want to say in this moment with presence instead of, we want to respond to life versus react to life. And that really takes slowing down and practicing, how do I want to respond to this situation right now, which is really creating some pain inside of me. And it could be that we say, instead of my saying something right now, which I will regret and you might not want to hear, I think I need to go for a walk. That pause might create space inside of us so that we might go walk or just go into the other room. Or instead of saying no to a situation, say, let me think about it. I need some space to be able to think about how I really want, how I want to be in this relationship, how I want to be at work. And so it just gives us permission. It's once again, if our face is in the soup, we can't really smell it. So it's given us wisdom to have that pause, because it creates space between me and you so that we can really see each other and come from a different place instead of coming from the amygdala that feels like it's on survival mode and wants to react with anger or fight, flight, freeze. So it gives our brain some space to be able to come more from the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that responds to life instead of reacts.
Something just came up for me when you were talking about the pause, and you were talking about the pause when you're perhaps angry or getting ready to do something that you might regret. And something sort of similar but completely different came up for me, and that is basically that you can take advantage of the sacred pause in any situation that you tend to do habitually. So, for example, if you habitually say yes to everything that you're asked to do, you want to help, you really want to help, and so you're always saying yes, and then you're overtaxed and you're not taking care of yourself. Or, and I think this happened to me sometimes as a parent, if you automatically say no. Mm-hmm. There's the automatic yes and the automatic no. Mm-hmm. And in whatever situation you're in, the pause can really be valuable.
Yeah.
In any situation that's habitual, I think.
Exactly. It helps us break that habit of saying the yes or the no.
And I think it's really hard.
Mm-hmm. It's super
because
hard.
It's a habit.
And there's no guru. That's the best part. You don't have to go to Berkeley or to Kripalu or the Omega Institute. It's right here. It's inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And Rumi has this great poem, The Guest House, which I highly recommend y'all, anyone there, y'all, we're from the South here, Pam and me, to Google Rumi's The Guest House and it's this great tool of learning how to welcome everything that arises within us, to welcome it with space and compassion. And like a child, it's a bit of a reparenting of ourselves,
which I think we just so badly need. And you touched upon this, but we are often so hard on ourselves. We would never say some of the things that we say to ourselves to anyone else. And I like the idea of the child. You would never speak to a child in the way that we sometimes chastise ourselves. I wanted to reflect back to you, Julia, something that you wrote when we were preparing for the interview. You said, listening in means to metaphorically put my ear to my heart and belly, or whatever part of my body that is calling out to me, and to be a larger, loving, spacious, non-judgmental presence for all of me. That's great.
Yeah.
Didn't know you were so wise, did you?
No, I forgot that I wrote that. I like that.
That's why I wanted to read it back to you, because I thought you might not even remember writing it, because I think it came from the heart. And I will share, when Julia sent me some information about the sacred pause, which I was not familiar with, I looked it up and I did find a sacred pause meditation by Tara Brach, which I'll share on the website, which is listeninshow.org. And I wanted to, Julia, do you have any events or anything that you'd like to share? One of the things that, again, you sort of touched on was the idea of, or I interpreted it this way, listening in community. Mm-hmm. You were talking about how you were able to be with a group that helped you to get in touch with your emotions. Do you know of any resources here in the area that you could share with our listeners?
I'm happy to be a contact person for anyone that would like to try focusing a session. Mm-hmm. And I teach it. I'm a certified professional focuser, so I can teach people. There's 4 levels to learning this process. So I can teach folks this level if they're interested. And I would also, there's so many great resources on the website called focusingresources.com.
Focusingresources.com. Great. Well, Julia, I often have a gentle challenge for our listeners. Does anything come to mind for you that you would like to offer to our listeners?
I think the challenge for all of us, and in particular for me, lately, as I've been getting a plethora of emails about all the different groups that are being raised up because of the new administration that we have, is how are we going to be in 2017? Are we going to be spread out thin, exhausted? Or are we going to go deep with one or two issues that we feel compassionate about? And so this is a great chance to again pause and say, where do I belong? Where do I need to go? And how can I take care of myself? In the 80s, I was a very angry peacemaker and very exhausted as part of the sanctuary movement. I don't want to live my life that way anymore. I am a peacemaker, and I want to be a calm and compassionate peacemaker. So I just want to invite everyone to take some deep breaths and check again in your body to see where you need to walk towards.
Great. So I wanted to mention that coming up at 1 p.m. today, you can listen to Jolly Papa, music from the D.C. African scene, and you won't want to miss M&M with Marika Partridge at 7 p.m. on Thursdays. Listen In is produced by Pam and Scott Holland. Our theme song, I Don't Want to Go to Sleep Tonight, was written by Beth Rinaldo and Scott Holland. So stay tuned to WOWD-LP, Tacoma Park, and feel free to send us your thoughts, your questions on our Facebook page. Send us a tweet. Again, the website is listeninshow.org.